In celebration of Disneyland's 68th birthday, I wanted to talk about some of the original attractions that were there on opening day and are still in the park today. So here is my part 1 of the series, Disneyland Then and Now. When Walt Disney created Disneyland, he designed the lands and attractions with an interesting mix of optimism, dark forebodings, and theatrics. And no land exemplifies this more than Fantasyland, in Walt's words, the world of imagination, hopes, and dreams. Now, starting off with a Disney classic, The Teacups, a ride that had a rocky start due to a tight budget and timeline. Tucked behind the Carrousel in the original Renaissance Fair design, with overall designs influenced by the Sleeping Beauty film, after a major Fantasyland overhaul in the 80s, it now lives on the outer edge of Fantasyland by Alice in Wonderland and the canal boats, with its fanciful song wisping in the air while riders try not to vomit. Of course, what would Disneyland be without Peter Pan's Flight? Peter Pan's Flight was one of the first dark rides ever created using what was a new technology, black light, and black light paint. And all of these attractions were designed to make the guest feel like they were the main character, but for years guests would be confused with this lack of the main character even showing up in the ride, and eventually, decades later, the main characters found their way into the rides. Peter Pan was also unique due to its flying ship design, leaving no sign of a track while you rode. I still remember that feeling the very first time I rode Peter Pan. And it's what makes this ride a classic and still very popular even today. Another original dark ride was Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, inspired by the cartoon and book The Wind in the Willows, with more of a focus on humor, and was the most thrilling ride at Disneyland until the Matterhorn opened in 1959. And for some reason, everyone was totally cool with the gag of crashing with a train and then going to HE double hockey sticks after your day of boozing and recklessly driving. I'm not going to lie, I really love Mr. Toad's because of this bizarre scene and all of its quirkiness within the ride. This ride was a huge hit from the beginning, and nowadays it seems to be one of those things where people either really love it and it's a classic, or they don't even realize it's there, or they kind of forget about it. Which one are you? Are you a pro Mr. Toads, or are you I don't even notice Mr. Toads? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know. The storybook land canal boats. Initially the canal boats of the world, the ride started out as no more than boats that would break down often, floating past patches of weeds, down muddy waters, and cast members would try to convince park goers not to waste their tickets on this ride. Nowadays, you'll find more manicured plant life around the ride, with storybook theming highlighting some of Disney's classic stories. It's a very sweet ride that gets you off of your feet and brings you back to simpler times. And intertwined with the storybook canal boat ride, you have the Casey Jr. train ride. The Casey Jr. train wasn't exactly there on opening day since it was originally supposed to be a thrill ride, but they couldn't figure out how to stop it from doing Papa Willie's when it went up hills, so they ended up slowing it down, and it has remained very similar to its original experience and look ever since. So all aboard, as long as you don't mind squishing your adult body into a child-sized animal cage. This little train ride is just for you. Dumbo the Flying Elephant ride had a very similar start as many of the other Fantasyland rides, having to overcome engineering and building material difficulties and hiccups. Originally squished in the middle of the Fantasyland hub with all the other spinny rides, people immediately fell in love with this adorable ride. Because the simple fact is, a chubby flying baby elephant is the cutest thing in the entire world. I personally like to ride it around sunrise or at night for awesome views of Fantasyland and beyond. The King Arthur Carousel has been a beauty from the very beginning. Handcrafted in the early 1900s, this carousel and many of its horses are 100 years old. And if you ask me, I think they've had some work done. But whatever they're doing, they need to keep it up, because there's no place better to create such precious memories than on this vintage, beautiful attraction. And if you're lucky, you may be accompanied by live musicians or even some of your favorite Disney characters, so keep your eyes open. The Snow White attraction was the scariest of all the dark rides and originally only had a rope draped across the rider's lap. And in the original version, guests were chased by the evil witch throughout the ride, and people would complain about it being too scary. But Walt thought it was important for kids to understand that sometimes life is scary, which remained the case until right after the parks opened back up after the COVID closures, and they changed it to Snow White's Enchanted Wish, with a lot less witches and spooky things, and a lot more color, cheer, and a happily ever after that seemed to leave everybody pleased and happy with the new changes. And how can I not mention Disneyland's castle? What's amazing is when Walt put Sleeping Beauty's castle in the middle of Disneyland, the movie Sleeping Beauty wouldn't even be released for another 4 years. The castle acts as a gateway to Fantasyland and one of the most iconic structures in America, in my opinion. Originally, it was only a building from the outside, and guests could not enter the actual castle, and at one point it was overran by cats and mice. It eventually had the castle walkthrough added to it, where you can read and see the story of Sleeping Beauty as you journey up and down the stairs and hallways. Telling you the story with colorful and beautiful artistry. with your typical good guys and bad guys, and of course, a true love's kiss. Eventually leading you back to the middle of Fantasyland. Hey, if you guys liked this video today and going through some of the history, let me know, give me a like and a subscribe, and I'll get working on that part 2, because there's plenty more attractions to talk about.
The artists, the workers, and everybody that helped make this dream come true. Let's go into Fantasyland and have some fun. Goodbye, folks.